Welcome to Evilive, the live media commentary show that answers the question, how much cock does it take to reverse the virus? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we're reviewing 28 years later, The Bone Temple. This is a spoiler review. If you don't want the spoiler, leave. That being said, welcome. All right, so the log line of this is, as Spike is inducted into Jimmy Crystal's gang on the mainland, Dr. Kelson makes a discovery that could alter the world. So this is a 2026 post-apocalyptic horror film directed by Nia DaCosta and written by Alex Garland. It was shot back-to-back with its predecessor 28 years later from 2025 and serves as the fourth installment overall in the 28 Days Later film series. There's actually going to be a new film, because these new 28 years later is meant to be a trilogy, that's going to be released next year, and Danny Boyle is going to be directing it himself. He is, of course, the original director of 28 Days Later. So once again, this is directed by Nia DaCosta, written by Alex Garland. The cinematography was by Sean Bobbitt, which I thought was in line with everything else we've seen from the 28 Days Later franchise, which is good. The music is by Hildur Gunnadóttir. I'm sorry, dude. The music is nice. It is background, and it never once did I stop and go like, oh, this is taking over. This is sort of stepping to the forefront. It was playing with a lot of the themes of 28 Days Later that we've had in the past, which makes logical sense. And it even ends with one of the songs for a very good reason from the very first 28 Days Later, which I'll get to at the end of this. So the score itself is good, but 28 Days Later score is like the height of all of the film scores of this franchise for me. So this was originally released 16 January in the US. It had a budget of $63 million, and I don't think as of right now it's getting close to that yet, which is unfortunate because this is a really good, in my opinion, a really good film. Let me adjust myself here. The whole premise of this film is so integrated into its predecessor. I mean, of course, it's meant to be a trilogy, but it's following this young kid who, at the end of the last film, is met up with this group of weirdos that end up like slaughtering these infected, and then just bring him into their world. And so we pick up right from that moment where he is literally handed a knife and says, look, if you want to be one of my fingers, because all of the people inside this group are fingers of the hand of Jimmy Costa. Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal is the main character's name, played by JackOConnell, who is just really, really great in the role. The kid Spike is played by Alfie Williams, of course, reprising his role, and he's fantastic. And so Spike has to kill this kid in order to become a Jimmy. Now, if he doesn't, then he's going to get murdered. So it's not really a choice he has. He has to kill this guy. But this guy is an adult. And so it comes down to this moment where the guy is just tormenting and taunting the kid because he's a little kid. And of course he could kill him at any moment. And so Spike pantses him, grabs the knife and jabs it into his artery in his inner thigh. The dude doesn't know that it's an artery, pulls the knife out, and blood starts spouting out, and the guy dies. This, of course, pits him against another Jimmy, who is the guy's mate, and sort of brings him into one of the fingers, one of the Jimmy fingers, and everyone that is a member of this group, which, of course, are all kids because they're easier to control by this, older cult leader. He has to adopt the name of Jimmy, and he has to wear a wig that, is sort of reminiscent of Jimmy Savile from the UK. And then they just literally go from house to house of survivors and torment them and murder them, and then kill every infected on the way. So the whole setup of this cult, which is the heart and soul of this film, well, that's not fair. It's the periphery and where we follow the story. The heart and soul is actually the Bone Temple, justified by its name, and of course everything that happens there, which I'll get to in a minute. So this cult is going around doing these horrible, atrocious things, and Spike is having a hard time even witnessing it, because they're literally like de-skinning people, taking the flesh off of their torsos, and everyone's puking, trying to get through it. And Jimmy himself, like the leader, isn't actually doing it. He's having these other kids do it, of course, because he's a user, like cult leaders are. Now, this psychology of this character is very interesting to me. He was raised by a pastor. When the infection hit, the infected killed his mother and sister, and so he ran to the church where his father was, and his father was already infected, and he was sort of preaching this idea of hell on earth and demons have come to walk the land. And so the kid, not understanding because he's a kid with everything that's happening, actually believes that his father is Satan and he unleashed demons on the earth. And so he spins this whole narrative in this cult around that idea that he is the son of Satan and it is their job to destroy life on this planet. And, they are the inheritors of this planet. Now, this all flies in his face here in the third act. But until then, let's jump over to the Bone Temple and Dr. Ian Kelson, because this is the heart and soul of this, is Dr. Kelson. All he's doing is creating this Bone Temple as a memento mori, this sort of honoring of those that have died because of the infection. And his whole purpose is to try to figure out a way of reversing this and trying to understand the infection. And he does this through a character that he is called Samson, which is one of the alphas, one of the new versions of the infected that we were introduced to in the last film, 28 years later. So Samson started coming around because, of course, he saw a living being and he went to kill him. But the doctor had these darts that had a whole bunch of psychedelic drugs in them, a sort of cocktail of sorts, that stopped Samson in his tracks, and he just was drugged up and dopey and just sort of stood there shaking. This happened enough that the behavior of dulling the pain of the rage virus meant going to the doctor to get your dose of drugs. He became an addict. And this behavior continued until the doctor could continue to test boundaries with Samson and communicate with him and try his best to unravel this rage virus. What he starts to discover is that there are, in fact, ways of reversing this virus, and he's witnessing it firsthand through the character of Samson. And so we are actually watching the rage virus spiral out everywhere else, creating new versions of, basically undead, but the infected. And this one doctor in this one place, just out of sheer accident, has discovered a potential cure. Meet the cult. So one of the good characters, Erin Kellyman, is an actress who is in Solo, A Star Wars Story, her character I thought was one of the best parts of that whole film. I really enjoyed her, and I'm so glad to see her again. She is her character is Jimmy Inc., also known as Kelly. Her regular name was Kelly, but when she got inducted into the group, she's Jimmy Inc. She is a full-blown believer in the idea of the hell on earth, but not so much as Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal being the son of Satan or, really knowing what the fuck he's talking about. But she does believe the other religious rhetoric. She stumbles across from a distance this bone temple and sees Dr. Kelson talking with Samson, and he's taking drugs himself to pass the time. So he's dancing and hearing, there's a lot of Depeche Mode music in this movie. He's hearing music and he's dancing to the music, and he starts dancing with Samson, and Samson doesn't really dance. He just sort of Frankenstein's monsters it as best he can. Super weird tone of the film, but it all does come together in its weird, disparate parts of monstrosity and infection and cults and cures and dance sequences. Yeah. It all does make contextual sense. And so, and I have to say, there's parts of this movie that I don't really enjoy as much, and I don't feel like is a very good indicator of a 28 Days Later film. And yet other parts that are really, really honed in on being 28 Days Later type of a film. And then it explores new avenues, which evolve the franchise, which is very smart for a franchise to do and necessary, keeping it interesting and stuff without just doing the same type of a film over and over and over again. So I understand the choices made, which is why I still enjoyed the film, though it's not my favorite in the series. All that being said, Jimmy Inc. sees this doctor who is covered in iodine to protect himself from the infection. And so he's all red, dancing around, and she believes in the devil, leading demons on earth, and he's dancing around with an alpha, Samson, the infected. So he's literally playing with a demon in hell on earth. So she sees the devil. So she goes back and tells everyone, I just saw the devil. Basically, they're going to be killing Spike because he refused to capture this pregnant woman who escaped. I mean, that's a loose term because she was going to escape. He asked her to take him with her. He was told to kill her. He asked her to take him with her because he doesn't want to be with this weird cult, but they're going to kill him if he leaves, or if he tries to leave. And she goes up to him and like punches him in the fucking gut or something, drops him like a sack of potatoes, and she runs off. And so he has to come back, tail between his legs. He's like, I'm sorry, I don't have her. She ran away. Or he claims to have killed her, but they can't find her. No one believes him because he's a little kid. He couldn't even go along with the murder that they were all committing inside this barn. And so ultimately, like, well, we're going to have to, Satan is going to have to decide. Satan, through their cult leader, is going to have to decide whether he lives or dies and what happens to him. Some of the Jimmies want him to be dead. Others want to save him. And so Jimmy Inc. says, well, why don't we just let Satan find out? And the cult leader's like, yeah, because he's like psychotic. He hears voices in his head. He hears the devil speaking to him, he claims. So he's clearly psychotic. He's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. She's like, no, I actually saw him. I saw the devil and I can take you to him. So this freaks the leader out, but he's got to go along with it. And so they go to where she saw him and they're like looking through these binoculars and he's like, fuck, okay, what do I do? He's like, yep, that's the devil. I'm going to go talk to him. You all stay here. So he goes and talks to this guy, literally thinking, this is my father. This is the devil. He hasn't seen him since he was a little kid. So he doesn't know what he's going to look like now. And he's all painted red and stuff. And I mean, it's more orange, but still. So he goes to this huge bone temple, which again looks like death and hell and Satan. And he sees this painted up demon looking human and starts having a conversation with him, understands that this is actually a doctor and he's built this as a memorial to the dead and he's trying to cure infection. And he's like, look, I'm going to fucking kill you, or you're going to pretend that you're Satan and you're going to trick all my followers and we're going to do this and then we'll leave you alone so you can just live out your life. But I need you to do this for me. And so what is the doctor going to do? He's going to fucking die if he doesn't. So he sets up this kick-ass sequence with 666, Number of the Beast song, and he has it projecting super loud. He's got fire everywhere in this whole bone temple lit up area, massive altar. And he's like drugs up everyone, blows drugs in their face. So they're tripping psychedelic trips while he's running around like this demon and singing the song. It is so fucking cool. And so I'm sitting here like rocking out in my seat, having a ball, watching this insanity go, just happening on screen, and they're all buying it. All the Jiminy's are like, yep, this is Satan. This is exactly what I thought Satan would be like and do, because they're all tripping balls too. And even the leader's tripping balls. And so he goes through this whole performance and then he's like, okay, well, Satan, Father, what would you like me to do? And he's like, you need to grow your horde and, grow more Jimmies and spread across this land. And the doctor's slowly realizing that he is actually authorizing more pain and torture on other people, living people, on other human beings, not infected. And he's starting to get his conscience troubled by this notion as it's actively happening. And then he looks over because all the Jimmies are in masks and he sees the eyes of Spike in one of these masks, the kid who he met in the last film and really not long ago. And so he sees him and he tries to turn them all against him saying, you know what? Jesus died for the sins of man. He was God's son. You're my son, and you need to do the same. And so he tries to turn all the Jimmies against the cult leader to have them crucify him. And so Jimmy Inc. is all for it. She has not trusted the leader of this cult for a long time. And so she's all for murdering him. And then the leader turns on the doctor, revealing him just to be a human and that this was all a trick, which then pisses them off even more. And they attack Jimmy and end up like literally crucifying him upside down. As the only two left alive are Jimmy Inc., Erin Kellyman's character, and Spike, Alfie Williams' character, and they go off into the distance at the end of the film together. And then, of course, we see Jimmy, the leader, upside down, crucified, and an infected attacks him at the very, very end. And it was just this really great moment of realizing that this is what happens when humans have no laws or boundaries and education. You're literally an animal trying to survive in an animalistic world. And the older people who were survivors, they all went the direction of civilization and trying to maintain it and, you know, supporting each other and stuff like that. But this little cult is kids who didn't know any of that society beforehand. This is 28 years afterward, and they're all under 28. So they've all grown up with this being their reality of just survival. And so it's easy for someone to come in and spread these lies. I mean, we have cults nowadays, so it's not shocking that there would be cults in this sort of environment and make them do atrocious things because we've seen it in our own real world, happening. So it's just super fascinating. And then to see the ending where he finally gets what he deserves, but a more compelling idea is that Samson gets cured through the help of the doctor, and he comes back and sees the doctor and takes him away, like picks him up and walks him off. Not sure what he's going to do with him. Hopefully that's in the next film and stuff. But then this film closes with Cillian Murphy's character with his daughter sort of teaching her, education and history. And then they see Jimmy Inc. / Kelly and Spike running across the field near them, and they say that they're going to go help them. And then the film ends. And so this third film is going to be about where we started, of course, with Cillian Murphy's character Jim and his daughter helping Spike and Kelly survive in some way. So really, really great film. I had a blast watching it. The musical sequences were out of left field, but I really enjoyed them. The whole satanic I am Satan performance was fucking gold. I mean, just beautiful. So let me go through some of these notes here. The film was announced as part of a planned trilogy with Alex Garland serving as screenwriter for all three. In 2025, Danny Boyle confirmed that he is actually going to direct the final film in the trilogy. So the next one that's going to be out next year. It was shot back-to-back with its predecessor 28 years later, which is great. I'm hoping they shoot the next one soon because we don't want Spike aging out all Stranger Things, looking like a grown man when he's still supposed to be a kid, unless there's a time jump in the story, which there could be. It would make sense that there would be. The bone temple itself was constructed from around 5,500 skulls and 150,000 bones, each individually cast, attached to 1,000 uprights or columns to make the bone temple, which is very cool to see on screen. The sequel is going to continue to explore the corrosive elements of human evil, as well as the relationship between the film's human survivors and those who have been infected by the franchise's central rage virus. And so this quote says, "The film is the weird, deranged cousin of 28 years later, who you might be a bit of Sheen, though because they have a weird, questionable interests," O'Connell said, "I don't think the infected are purely antagonists in our film. It's definitely will make you consider that." And yeah, the infected are not the monsters of this film. We do see the infected in the film a few times, like a handful of times, but they're dispatched so easily by the Jimmies that they're not a real threat. It's only to other regular people that aren't psychotic that they seem to be a real threat. And even then, people get away a lot. So they're not exactly the scary monsters that they once were in 28 Days Later or subsequent films. even as much as last film. But this film is not about celebrating the infected. It's about the turning point of getting to the other side of the infected. And that is finding a cure. And this doctor literally, through a subsequent series of time and drugs, has found a way of bringing someone back from the other side cognitively, so that they, in fact, realize that they were infected and they no longer are. And that is, and it's only happened to one character. And then, of course, the doctor dies at the end. And so who knows? Are other people going to stumble across the Bone Temple? Is Spike going to tell Jim about it and they're all going to travel there, find the answer and go to some other, like Spike's old home island and bring the truth of the cure there? I mean, there's so much great storytelling possibility with one infected having been brought around. Of course, he might also just die and no one ever finds out. She also continues, it's so hard to describe the tone of the movie that you actually won't even attempt to, but it keeps the same unique off-the-wall surprising energy. It absolutely does keep off-the-wall surprising energy. The first film was very much frenetic, frantic anxiety in trying to survive. The second one was trying to set up structure and organization, and that fell apart. The third one, it was about survival in this post-apocalyptic world. And the fourth one, this newest one, Bone Temple, is about finding and overcoming the cure. And they mentioned that the next film will be about the nature of redemption. So they said 28 years later was about the nature of family. The Bone Temple is about the nature of evil. And the next film is going to be about the nature of redemption. And I do think that this final trilogy of the films is really paying off those themes in a unique and beautiful way. And I'm really happy to see this evolution of the franchise instead of just sticking with a trope like Scream, for example. Hey, Victor, how you doing, man? Honestly, you've not watched the third or fourth film, but you're apprehensive. Seems like Attack on Titan, where it expands, loses a unique element, which made it work. You really kind of have to be along for the ride if you're going to give it a go. I mean, the first one is my favorite. I enjoyed the second one, but 28 Days Later is my favorite. I enjoyed 28 Years Later, but I think I might like 28 Weeks Later better. And the Bone Temple, I think I like more than 28 Years Later, but it's just because of the craziness of it than anything else. It felt less like a zombie film, which was the beginning of the whole franchise. So it is weird. And so I totally understand why people would be hesitant to jump in this. But for me, it worked, and I'm along for the ride for sure. Near the beginning of the film, Samson actually eats a man's brains, and this is a reference to the stereotype of zombies eating brains, which originated with Return of the Living Dead in 1985 and subsequent films. The film explores themes of juxtaposing human violence with innate humanity and the brutality and infection. And it's just a really interesting artistic interpretation of the human animal and where we would go. And if we're infected, are we still human inside of that? And is there a way to get to the other side of the infection? Because if it is just an infection and you're not actually dead yet, well, then we can treat diseases and chronic conditions. So can we treat rage? It's very interesting to me. And I found it thought-provoking afterward. My wife and I just sat watching credits talking about it, about what it could possibly mean for future film. But I also don't want the series to end because I like the rage zombies. It was the first time I ever saw on screen zombies that were fast and terrifying. Up until that point, it was always just slow, lumbering zombies. And it wasn't very exciting, Late to the stream, sorry if it's been discussed, but how does this rank among The Last of Us and other zombie stories? That's rough because this is really about a doctor finding answers and a child falling into a cult and trying to get out of it. It's not as much about zombies or survival, which is shocking because that's the world it's set in. So I think The Last of Us is better than this, for sure. At least I enjoyed Last of Us. This is not as good as 28 Days Later. It's just not. But it's a very fun watch. And if you're in for the franchise, then it's definitely worth your time. But if you're trying to rank it amongst zombie flicks, I don't think it's going to be very high. It's not that type of a movie. This forces you to think and consider more than just watch spectacle and react. And I kind of like that about it, you know? It's interesting. I mean, you can still sit back and just enjoy the horror and monstrosity that unfolds in front of you because there's a lot of it and it's fun. I love that stuff. But yeah, it's a different beast of its own. And I kind of like that about it. So in any case, because of all of that, I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 evil eyes. Look, it's a good film. It's a good horror film, but it's not the 28 Days Later film that I was expecting. That's okay, and I'm still along for the ride, but it just didn't hit on all cylinders, you know, on reflection. And so I have to give it 4 out of 5. Would you say it drags it down like the Hellraiser sequel dragged down Hellraiser? It's an interesting parallel question. Yes, I could see that. A lot of people don't like the sequels to Hellraiser after 3, if you liked 3. Most people are like core 1 and 2. Because the diminishing quality and storylines and stuff like that. I liked them because they felt like vignettes. It didn't have to be one single storyline. It was just, how did the Cenobites exist in the world and how did other people tap into them? It was more comic booky. And I enjoy that aspect of it. And so I actually don't mind the later, especially some of them. I think some of them are really good. But the core of Hellraiser is 1 and 2. And I think you could make a parallel with that, with this series where the core is 1 and 2. Arguably for me, the core is 1. But 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later is really what the story's about. 28 Years Later in the Bone Temple is the evolution and the culmination of the infection. And so it does very much feel like we're moving away from it rather than indulging in it. And that can be scary for people who just want to enjoy another zombie flick, you know? So if that's what you're going in for, it's not really going to hit for you like it didn't hit for me in that way. But I would still challenge people to check it out. Great questions, by the way. Really love that. Love Last of Us. It doesn't have to beat that to still be worth watching. Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree. All right, that is it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the content that I produce, I would like to invite you to become a patron on Patreon or a member of this YouTube channel. Thank you, patrons and members. And as always, like it or not, evil spelled backwards is live. So get out there and be evil.